All right. Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to have you. Thank you for joining us for today's conversation. This is part of a series that we're leading around courageous conversations on inclusion, access, equity, and diversity in CTE. So this is one conversation. There have been many, and we just want to say thank you. This was scheduled as a book discussion. And if you've read the book, awesome. We're planning to discuss some books, but if you haven't read the book, don't worry. The structure of this meeting will be designed to generate conversation and be engaging, whether you've read the book or not, and no matter where you are on the compass. And that's a reference to the Courageous Conversations book. So now, before we get started, just want to do a couple of technical aspects for today's conversation. We will be recording this conversation. And we know that these topics can get emotional and they can be, we can get passionate about them. So we just wanted to let everyone know that they will be, when you're sharing your personal stories and experiences, they will be recorded. And then finally, we would just wanted to say, if this conversation starts to feel uncomfortable, you can private message me, and I'd be happy to jump into a breakout room with you, and we can keep talking about, what the concerns are and continue the dialogue. So now that the logistics have been addressed, I want to turn this over to our book group leaders, and I'm going to start with Matthew Green. Welcome,
Awesome.
Matt.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm excited. I'm really excited about this, and I'm nervous. I had a chance to read So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijema Oluo, and I want to own and be vulnerable about my nervousness, and I think having the author speak into this is really important to me. So I'm just going to start with a couple quotes that I think express where I am and why I'm excited about this. So here's the first one from page 51 of that book. She says, "No matter what, when you're having a conversation about racial oppression, you will not be the only one who is nervous, and you will not be the only one who is taking a risk. These conversations will always be hard because they will always be about the hurt and pain of real people. And if you are white and you don't want to feel any of that pain by having these conversations, then you are asking people of color to continue to bear the entire burden of racism alone. I'm not okay with that. So I want to be here to listen and learn and to speak and use my voice to be part of solving the problem that is harming so many of our people in America and helping simultaneously people like me. I'm not okay with that." She invites us on page 7 to sit with our discomfort and see if it has anything to offer. So I want to invite you to do that with me today. If you're experiencing any discomfort, to just sit with it, try to pay attention to it, listen to it, and see what it's saying. And then a couple other quotes that I think frame why I'm so grateful for this opportunity and excited to be with you today. From page 31, we cannot look at a society where racial inequity is so universal and long-standing and say, this is just the doing of a few individuals with hate in their hearts. It doesn't make sense. I am learning how important it is to always bring the conversation back to systemic racism, how we got here and what maintains it. And I'm very interested in getting into that with everyone today. And finally, my quote from page 35, "Tying racism to its system causes and effects will help others see the important difference between systemic racism and anti-white bigotry. In addition, the more practice you have at tying individual racism to the system that gives it power, the more you will be able to see all the ways in which you can make a difference." So I think I'm going to tag in Candace. Is that right?
Yeah. Do we want to show Matt the video that Chris was going to show just about the other book, just to like honor that some people may have read it?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
So we had another book group leader, Chris Elliott, and we're hopeful he's okay, but he is not able to make it. But he did share with us a video that we'd love for Dana to play, because I know some of you did potentially read Courageous Conversations. So let's watch this video, and then we'll tag in Candace, and she'll get us going on what we're going to do next.
So what is it when I'm thinking about practice? I'm simply thinking about having an effective conversation on race, one that I can depend on, I'm thinking about not worrying as the topic comes up. I'm thinking about when that data is presented and we see these disparities, just really being in a place of, I can handle that. I can take that on. When the newspaper has a headline that is racialized, a riot is occurring, or something happened that we just know race is a part of, what practice do we engage? And that's what this piece of the book is about. And I think of preparation as our practice. And how do we create a practicum, if you will, so that we can explore effectively this intersection of race and schooling. And prior to that, the intersection of race and my life. And so for me, practice and the preparation comes from developing a deep understanding of the protocol that you are about to explore. And I'm thinking, how is it that we create a way in which we talk about race effectively, time and time and time again? And where do we begin? And where do we sustain ourselves in this conversation? Where is it going to be hard? What tools will we need then? And how do we take this conversation to a place where it transforms the circumstances that we're in? And so how do we practice exploring where race has taken us off course, where the results, because the situation is racialized, are something less than we're actually capable of achieving? Beyond personalizing race as a practice, we get to practice also listening to other people's racial points of view. And in doing so, we do it in a way that doesn't negate what they're saying, but it actually humanizes the person who's talking to us. It tells that person that what you say matters to me. I'm listening to you. I see you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So now, Candace, do you want to introduce yourself in your new role? We're so thrilled to have you.
Hey, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Candace Mott, and I am the newly assigned IAED manager part-time for ACTE. I am really, truly excited about taking on this role to help coordinate, to help manage, and just to further along the work that folks like Amanda and Matthew and Chris and the ACT leadership have been doing for the last few years. And so I really welcome this opportunity, and I'm excited about today's webinar that we are participating on today. And so everyone should see the Padlet link that Matthew has in the chat. What is going to happen from here, we are going to divide everyone up in a few breakout rooms to help with small group discussion about courageous conversations in our book. You want to talk about race. And so in the Padlet, you are going to talk about some of the book themes that are there that you all have pulled out, some quotes. And so Matthew's already kind of gotten to scaffold us a little bit to get us started. I guess I used to be a teacher, so I have my teacher words. So Matthew's already kind of gotten us started with some examples and ideas and book quotes. You can also add on to this, because the idea is that we will have a large sharing document of information that really kind of summarizes what this book was about. We're gonna add in some different ideas, related thoughts. So what did you all, what additional things you think about? Even it may be a different text or another resource, for example. So put those things in there as well, because this kind of helps us to create our body of work, body of research, and other things that people may use to further this, the IAED work along. And so what you need to do in your groups. You need to assign someone to be like your recorder, so the person who will actually type in on the Padlet. Although everyone will have rights to do that, you all can decide how y'all want to handle that in your group. But if you want one person to write, to be the scribe, do so. Have someone to kind of serve as a facilitator to kind of keep everybody on track and help move this conversation along. Make sure to also introduce yourselves as well, real quick. And then have someone to be ready to kind of just talk about, summarize what you all discussed in your groups when we come back to the big group. Okay? So Dana, I think, is about to finish breaking you all up into groups. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, thoughts?
I think that's great, Candace. Thank you. And I'm excited when we come back together, we'll have everybody can share. We'll have a big discussion. Anything people notice, conversations we can share. And I see somebody already did it, but you can also put a thumbs up if you just like something that somebody else wrote. So yeah, perfect. Nice job, Candace. And we're so thrilled ACT brought you on.
All right, it looks like we're going to have 2 rooms, one room with 4 and one room with 3. So I'm going to go ahead and send everybody off, I think.
All right, thanks, Dana.
You bet.
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. So this is a great example of sometimes, best laid plans and intentions. We really thought that we had conveyed and communicated about this book study, but we're happy people are here anyway. So we're going to take a quick shift, and I'm going to put my friend Donald Walker on the spot because he loves when I do that. And and at our last CAST staff meeting, we had a wonderful, CAST is the organization I work for. We had a wonderful conversation around terminology, language, and identity. And so I'm wondering, Dawn, if we could, with open heart, kind of enter into that conversation. And I'll give you an example from my lived experience. I'll ask Dawn to give an example from his, and then we're going to ask everyone in the room to share in the chat how you identify. So I identify as a person with a disability. I have ADHD. So there's person-centered, person-first language, and then there's disability-first language. And language is nuanced, right? The way we use terminology can be complicated. It can be shifting. It can be uncomfortable. People cannot know how to use the right language, and that can hold us back from having conversations. So what I want to do is I introduced myself that way, and I'll also introduce myself in the chat. Dawn, do you mind jumping on this impromptu conversation with me?
Certainly. So I am Donald Walker. I identify as a cisgender African-American male. As I have grown and evolved, I shy further and further away from being referred to as a Black American because Black is a color. And if we also get into the historical aspects of what that particular color denotes, it never really denotes anything good, unless you're talking about Black Friday, which I really still haven't figured out the connection between those two things. But I also identify as a husband, a father, a Christian, and a lover of all things science fiction, Marvel Cinematic Universe, even the DC Extended Universe, as crappy as most of those movies have been.
That's awesome. And Dawn loves disco. Sorry, I'm okay. So what we'd love to do is have for you, each of us, to just share how we identify in the chat. And the reason we're doing this is one of the themes from our book, So You Want to Talk About Race, is intersectionality and the importance of honoring and discussing and sharing that intersectionality, and especially in our CTE worlds and CTE environments. So we're going to come back and pull some quotes from the book and pull some quotes from the chat, but I want to pause here. You can come off mic if you want to share out loud how you identify. We'd love to hear your voice, or you can share in the chat.
No, people are probably typing in the chat if people are like my students that they have. So I'll go. My name is Candace Mott. I identify as a cisgender Black woman. I identify as a millennial. I also am identify as a person that's introverted. And other things about me. I also do too like comics as well. Yes. I've probably been a DC fan though most of my life over Marvel. But I do love Marvel. I do love how Marvel puts the story together. It is masterful actually. So I will, and I am identify as a Christian as well, and a mother.
Thank you so much, Candace. I'll just draw your attention to the chat where Matt has shared how he identifies as a cisgender white man, learner, husband, father, nerd, and curious mutt. So I think that's great. Okay, Bruce. I'm Bruce. I identify, I think differently depending on the audience. I usually say white cisgender male, a historian, a razorback, and a dad. Bruce, I think that's really, I'm gonna show some ignorance here, Bruce. What is a razorback? Is it a sports team? I feel like it must be a sports team.
Yes, Arkansas.
Yeah, it is. It's somebody who went to the University of Arkansas. So
Big.
it's a very angry, wild pig.
Awesome. That's all. I'm glad you. That's great. Okay,
Great football games. Great game. Great football game.
Yeah.
Paige is sharing, hello, I'm Paige. I identify as a cisgender woman, a person with a disability, mom, explorer of the world and the people in it. Welcome, Paige. We're so happy to have you. Jennifer is hi, Jennifer identifies as cisgender female, white, Hispanic, but I feel uncomfortable with that one since I am so white. A mother, Christian, also Marvel fan, and a Disney adult. I love Disney. Sister, daughter, counselor, and traveler. Great. Okay. And I want to keep, I know it's kind of awkward, but I want to sit in silence for at least 30 more seconds to let people who might want to come on mic, or people who might want to jump in the chat. So we're going to do 30 more seconds at least. Okay, great. So I'm not sure if I actually
Make a
waited
couple
30
just
seconds.
oddball shout outs. Can I really quick?
Yes.
I had to run out of the room. Anytime somebody references Razorbacks, I'm fortunate to be at home right now. My dad graduated from University of Arkansas, and my grandmother left us. It's not going to show. This is a, I got to turn my thing off. This is worth it. I promise you, this is worth it. This is a cross stitch. Not showing up. It's a cross stitch of the Razorback from my grandmother that's in my room, my living room. Bless my wife for allowing that. Woo pig suey. Let's go Arkansas. And then I saw we have a Girl Scout. My wife is a Girl Scout, been a Girl Scout her entire life. And I love it when adults, like I am a Girl Scout. She's a card carrying Girl Scout at age 40, which is awesome. Go team. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, Matt, I was a Girl Scout till 12th grade, and I don't always admit that. So it's nice to be able to like share that identity. Judy says, afternoon, I'm Judy. I am a Christian African-American sister, aunt, and godmother who is a proud Gator alum, Trekkie, biker, and music aficionado. Carissa said African-American cisgender female, mother, wife, sister, friend, Christian professional, foodie who loves to travel and have fun. Amazing. Okay, so part of this exercise. So let's welcome everybody, and let's just shout out that we all have different identities. And I love that Bruce shared that those identities are, you know, sometimes we share different parts of ourselves depending on who we're with and where we're at. And I also want to, so now I want to take a step back and say this conversation, we'd like to center it on how do we have courageous conversations? How do we talk about race in our CTE environments? And that's where we really want to have this conversation land. And so to that end, I would invite maybe anyone who did it. So let's just show of hands. You could just do your little emoji thing. Did anyone read? Who read So You Want to Talk About Race? Just a quick show of hands, just so we can see kind of what we're dealing with here. Great. Okay. Okay. So quite a few of us read it. Okay. Did anyone read the Courageous Conversations book? Did anyone read that book? Because there was you had two options. No. Okay. Well, then what's nice about this is we can just we're going to focus on Courageous Conversations. So that's really great. So just so everyone knows, this is a really fantastic book, and maybe I'll let someone share, you know, if someone who read it wanted to kind of summarize what it was about, what's your elevator pitch, or how do you tell people about it? I would love to hear that. So I saw, Jennifer, that you read it. I wasn't able to see everyone who read it, but if anyone wants to kind of give the 2-minute quick cliff notes, we would love to hear. I can always force Dawn to say something, but you know.
I mean, so I'm going to be honest, I had no idea that this book had anything to do with this session. I just read it for IAED, the mentorship program this last year. So it's been a long time since I've read it. So I don't know that I could give a good overview, but it was just kind of like a lot about different concepts dealing with racism and the idea about how to maybe start some conversations that are appropriate. And, you know, if we are, you know, not people of color, how it's not necessarily a person of color's job to, you know, deal with all of our baggage, you know, surrounding these issues, and maybe how to like talk about things in a way that's appropriate and not offensive, and maybe stop kind of like microaggressions. There were like some little things I remember writing down, like, oh, that's a really good way to, when I hear people, because I hear it all the time, like these little just aggressive things that people just say in passing, just ways to kind of shut that down in conversation were some of the things. And also kind of talking, the intersectionality piece I saw was on the Padlet. Just how much those things, you know, because we're not just one facet, like we're multifaceted, everybody. I mean, you can see it in all of the things that we wrote down. It all makes us different. And even the author kind of talked about like, oh, these weren't my kind of people that I was trying to spend time with. You know, when I was thinking about getting together with African Americans, I had a different view of what that was going to be like for me. I think she lives in Seattle. So, you know, there's a different subset. She was hanging out with educated people and they presented a certain kind of way. So we all have different facets of ourselves and how those things can play against us or for us in certain ways. So there was a lot going on, but I really did like taking some of it, just to be able to kind of stop some of the things that I hear when I'm kind of like, what do I, you know, because people get so ticked off when you talk about race a lot of times. I know it's hard to bring that up, or they get real sensitive about it. So it was nice to have some ways that we're kind of to gently get into conversations or to stop aggressive things from being said in a way that I think was very meaningful. Okay, that's a lot of talking for me.
You did great, Jennifer. Thank you so much. And I don't want to leave Amber out, so I just want to also draw our attention to the chat where Amber shared that how she identifies: Amber, Black, cisgender, Christian woman, wife, mother, PhD. So I just wanted to make sure that we saw that. And maybe it's worth noting that in the book, the author does say we're going to screw this up. So we're all going to make mistakes. So I just want to thank Jennifer for going first and sharing it, because this is all, we all have, want to do a good job having this conversation, and we're all going to screw it up. My very good friend Dawn Walker told me that, helped me see that, no matter what, I could offend people. And so I think it's just important to put that out there. Dawn, is there anything you want to say? I know we sort of read this book actually based on Dawn's recommendation. So I'd love to hear what he thinks.
So full transparency, I'm in a doctoral program. It's education studies, curriculum and critical social inquiry. And the class, ironically, that we read this book for is a class on intersectionality, which happily just turned in my last assignment on yesterday. So that part is over. One more class to do, and my first year as a doctoral student will be in the books. With respect to this book, thank you. First of all, I just need to say you guys are like my tribe. I saw more comic book, and then I saw Trekkie as well. It is so nice to be amongst fellow geekers in that respect. So thank you for that. I just really appreciate that. I think one of the best things about this book, and as I was sharing with our group, is while it's a scholarly book, it doesn't read like a scholarly book. It's very, very conversational in its delivery. And from an audience perspective, if memory serves, a lot of the book is literally written for the white audience. So if the white audience really wanted to have a conversation about race in the most safest of spaces, picking up this book would be a great way to do that. You could get some insight, keeping in mind that one African American does not speak for the entirety of the population, but at least it's an opportunity for you to engage in a safe way. And I have to say, do not underestimate, and if I get long-winded about it, just tell me to stop, but do not underestimate the power of you being in this space right now. There's a lot of courage involved in that. There's a lot of great character and integrity and big-heartedness, you just being in this space, because you're saying without uttering a word that you want to go out there and you want people to be able to be people. And you just want them to learn, and you want them to achieve, and you want them to grow, and you want them to have the level of successes that you've enjoyed, if not greater. So don't ever minimize the fact that you're in the room, and never minimize that in front of others who may not walk into these particular spaces. So that's the real nice thing about the book, and it does break up into a number of different areas that allow you to drill down. It'll give you some scholarly points to it, but she gives a lot of personal anecdotes, stories that really help to lift one up, like the microaggression one. We were going to talk about that before we ran out of time. Bruce was sharing that when he has his students, when his white students are more comfortable to bring it up, Bruce teaches 20th century African-American history, right, Bruce? Okay, and he very transparently said that when he walks into that class, which is typically made up of African-Americans, he walks in as a white male, looks on the African-American kids' faces, are like, are you sure you're in the right space, sir? That kind of thing. And so the white students, once they get to a level of comfort, have asked about the concept of microaggression, wanting to understand it, why it's so bad, so forth and so on. And so we were going to lift that particular part up, but just saying that this book offers that.
That's awesome, Dawn. Thank you so much. So maybe yes, please, Matt. Yeah.
Real quick. First of all, Don, I love how often I get to see you. And exactly what you said would be the experience for the white reader was my experience as a white reader. My subtitle for this book would be all the things I've heard a little bit about and want to know but don't know who to ask is this book. It's been an incredible guidebook for me to know what the terms mean, but also how to engage with it. And your point, last thing I want to say here is, she is not speaking for all Black people in America. And she says that. She's very clear about that. But she is doing an incredible service. I feel this debt of gratitude for her with this I don't want to make light of this insider view through her lived experience to lay all that bare for us so that we can learn. I mean, the first quote that I pulled from her, I felt like I started this book, I was going to highlight everything. I'm just going to read it to you real quick because it just immediately is page 3. It just put me right into place. She says, "It's very hard to survive as a woman of color in this world. And I remember saying once that if I stopped to really feel the pain of racism I encountered, I would start screaming and I would never stop." And for her to then write 200 more pages about what that is, to open those wounds and help us understand them, it's an incredible gift that it's been huge for me. So I can't recommend it strongly.
Yeah, I think Matt's speaking to something. So all of us, if we didn't read the book or we want to read it in small groups, we can bring it back. So the idea was maybe we could read it with our CTE centers, with our other educators as a discussion point. So in this last 10 minutes, though, what I was wondering, if the leaders, if Matt, if you think this is good, Matt and Dana and Candace, there's some very specific ideas that she gives us. And I was going to read a few, and then maybe we could have just a discussion in the chat. How do you do this in your CTE classroom? Because I think we want you all to leave inspired to read the book, right? Knowing that you have a group of people here at ACTE through IAED that want to have these conversations, and hopefully with 1 or 2 tangible things that maybe you could like take away from. So I'm going to say there's maybe I highlighted 4 things she says. She has a list that she gives on page 45, but the first one is state your intentions. So how are we making our intentions about talking about race known to our students and to our colleagues? So that's the one. How do we let people know about our intentions? When you start to feel defensive, how are you stopping and asking yourself why? So what do you do as an educator to combat your own emotional potential reaction? And then the last one is, how are we doing our research? And I will draw your attention to CTE has a problematic racial history. And do we all know about it? And are we, learning about, for example, CTE classrooms used to have janitorial training. Those were mostly for African-American young people to learn to be janitors, right? That's a problematic history in CTE. And we need to ask ourselves how that impacts, the education. So let's see what we have in the chat. So yeah, good, Matt, thank you. State your intentions. How are you making your intentions known to your students and colleagues? And then we have our second one, when you start to feel defensive, how are you mitigating that, stopping and asking yourself why? And then how are you doing your research? Victoria said, and immigrants. Victoria, can you help me understand what that comment means? Would you mind coming on chat and talking with us?
Yeah, definitely. No, just in the in your mention of janitorial programs, I've done work with looking at like opportunity gaps and the differences in enrollment. People don't often think about like pluses can also be negative, even though it looks like, oh, we have so many learners. And there was a program that I had an experience with where they were very excited about the opportunity that they provided for learners to be able to get a job, even if it wasn't a well-paying job in their community. And it was absolutely a janitorial program. And it was primarily comprised of people who had been very skilled workers in the country that they came from. And they were immigrants who didn't speak very much English and were channeled directly into that CTE learning opportunity in the United States.
Yeah, that's a problem. Thank you, Victoria, for sharing that. Total agreement. Anyone else? Anyone want to come off mic and sort of respond to these 3 sort of topics that I've thrown out into the world, or share on chat? I'd also invite you to just say maybe why you came today, or if you have a burning question that you want the group to discuss. We're also just willing to pivot that flexibly. So I can also call on people. Remember, I used to be a teacher, so if we want, we can. Dawn, you want to be called on, my friend? Or you're just telling everyone that I've called on you like a million times? Yeah.
Well, I figured maybe I'll just throw something out there and hopefully, maybe makes folk feel a little more comfortable. As quickly as possible, when I was teaching broadcast school, I had a young man. If you know anything about Michigan, there's almost a cutoff, I think, racially with Michigan. About halfway through the state, and you go up further, you're going to run into far more white populations than you will find with any other marginalized group of people. So Specs Howard down in Detroit area, southeast Detroit. So we got students from all over the state. And so I had, at the end of my time of teaching my particular class, there was a young white male who came up to me at the end of the class, and he told me, Donald, I just wanted to tell you thank you. I'm like, for what? He said, because until I met you, I used to think that Black people were just what I saw on TV, the robbers, the thugs, that kind of thing, or in the Cosby Show or something like that. But you helped me see that, there are some different aspects to Black people. And so he said this to me, and I remember this moment. It seemed like it lasts forever in my head. I had this choice in that moment. I could either clown this guy for what he just said to me, like, of course we're more than just this, that, and the third, and we're not just da 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 da. Or I could recognize the courage that it took for him to come up and say that to me, and how vulnerable he's leaving himself, and we can move forward from there. I chose the latter. And I said, listen, man, thank you. I appreciate what you're saying. It took a lot of courage for you to come up here and say that openly. And after that, we had the best relationship for the remainder of the time that he was in our program. And it always struck me that for people who are trying to bridge the gap, that minority groups have to have a measure of grace, even though they shouldn't have to have it, but they should have a measure of grace for people who are honestly trying to extend an olive branch of understanding so that relationships and learning can truly happen. So I could have been very defensive, and I would have probably had a right to be, given the history, but I made a conscious decision in that particular moment, in one of my better moments of myself, to not go that way. I've had some not so better moments, but we can talk about that later.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dawn, for sharing that. Does anyone else? Oh, let me draw our attention. Bruce said, in my classes, I teach at a community and technical college, but I teach in the gen ed side. Nonetheless, I always have what we call tech students in my class. I try to be as upfront as possible when I say for all courses that I teach that history belongs to all of us. It is a shared experience, and the semester will be broad and inclusive in the limited 16 weeks. That's great. Jana said, as a counselor, I'm always interested in increasing my own awareness to encourage and influence colleagues and students to respect humanity in all ways. That's why I'm attending this session. Thank you so much, Jana. Jana, we're happy to have you. Judy, I can see that you're off mic. Do you want to share anything with us?
Yeah, I live in a red state, Arkansas, and we just, our governor equates everything with race with CRT, which is not. Those of us who understand what CRT is understand that's just a dog whistle for rolling back. But teachers, public school teachers, and not just African American, of all races, we're struggling because, the Native American have their story. Our Hispanic and Latino, Latinx brothers and sisters have their story. Our Asian Americans have their story. Our Jewish Americans have their story. And just like we saw with the Civil Rights Movement, once we've suppressed one group, then it makes it easier and gives us agency to suppress everybody else. So we're in the public school space. We're struggling right now on how to do this. We have these national monthly observances of other cultures. So that's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, Judy, I just want to say, I hear you, and I've been hearing this across the country. Oklahoma, there's a huge struggle there. Obviously Florida, and I'm not going to claim at all to know the answer. I'd love to open it up to the group. I will say that one of the things that struck me in this book, just to bring us back to the book, is where the author talks about moves you can make to dismantle racism. And one of the moves that she suggests is if you're in a privileged location, or you can do things like ask why they're not disabled people in the room. And that struck me as interesting because, you're right. Once one group is oppressed, right, we're oppressing all. Also, I loved this one, support levies to improve public schools, right? So like we have to be talking about the importance of public school. So my response is also just to like draw us back to this book. And there are some really, I think, powerful moves she suggests. I see that Jennifer said Florida is struggling too, especially with LGBTQ issues in school. Absolutely. Bruce, we have the same struggles. Judy, legislation threatens about what we can and can't say in the classroom. I know that in Utah, the same thing is happening. We had teachers who talked to us, can't use the word equity in any of their conversations. This is super problematic. Does anyone else want to share, why they came today or a concern they're having? We have about 3 minutes. I'd like to save 1 minute for wrap up, but I'd love to hear from someone else.
So I came today because I've run into a lot of struggles with my peers, and now I'm in a more coaching position, which I'm very grateful for, to be able to be a little bit of a voice of influence and a little bit of voice of power. And I hear really disheartening conversations from my peers, from teachers around these issues, and so I don't know how to step in and intercept these things and say, like, and how to be a voice of reason and of love and of light in these conversations as a white woman, and do it correctly, and do it really to move these things forward, move these conversations forward in a more positive way. So that's kind of why I came today, if that makes sense.
Paige, that makes perfect sense. And I think a lot of us can relate to not knowing how to move the conversation, how to correctly, I like that you said that, or what's the right way to have these conversations. And I think what I would say is, if you haven't had the chance, both of these books do Courageous Conversations does give you actually a framework, a scaffold with a compass and everything on how to have these conversations. And then So You Want to Talk About Race, she really does break it into sections, like, oh, so you overhear someone talking about the school to prison pipeline. Oh, like, here's what that really is. Here's like how to talk about it. Or you overhear someone talking about, like, this is a chapter in the book, right? So why can't I say the N word, right? Like, if that's a conversation that you hear people saying, she's giving you very clear ways to have that conversation. So all I'm saying is both of these books do help. They offer you some tangible strategies. Chris, welcome. We're glad you're here. Anyone else? We have a minute left. Candace, you were going to close us. I think you're the closer. The closer. Oh, isn't that a term in a sports or something? I feel like that's a term.
It is a show.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I was thinking about even just the whole idea of CTE and intentions, right? A lot of my work and a lot of the things that I want to do within CTE are really based on, I think about often how CTE, college and career, is not the same for everybody. And so when we tell one group of kids that you can do this, or we tell all kids we can do this in a certain way, that, there are definitely spaces where kids start at different points, or they're not able to reach the same level of success as others. And so how do we truly make sure that within CTE that we have, true equity? And I think that's really, really important, especially for the sustainability of special populations and protected groups in our country. And so with that being said, because it is 5 o'clock, I have enjoyed this conversation, even though we had a little hiccup here and there in regards to the book, but I really truly have enjoyed this conversation and seeing everyone's comments. And I look forward to the next one that we have. I also will put my email in the chat And so if you have any other additional ideas, you want to continue the conversation, I like the idea of maybe actually really, doing a book study, maybe again another time with the same text. And so, so if you'd like to be in contact, my email is in the chat, and we can close it out for today. If no one else has anything to say, Amanda, Matthew, Chris.
I'll just add, Candace, that I invited folks to put their name and email in the chat, and we can invite them to be part of that IAED advisory group that you're running, so we can send them the direct invites. So I'll save this chat once everyone gets off. But I think if these folks are interested in joining a more like strategic conversation about this, I think Candace is starting to run that group. So. Okay.
Just real quick, I want to apologize to
Yeah.
everyone for, we had a work emergency that I could not get away from. And so I apologize. I am available. My email will be shared. Please reach out if you have questions. I'd love to chat with you all. I appreciate my colleagues for stepping up in education. You know, that's what happens sometimes. So thank you all.
Yeah, Chris, you were missed, but we forged ahead. But you were missed, but we just kept on going. All right, everybody. So go do great things. Have a wonderful evening. I'm going to stay on for a minute and save this chat.